Hello, this is Keith from SegMetrics again with Data Beats Opinion. I'm here today with Claire Suellentrop, who is the co-founder of Forget the Funnel, which is a program that helps leaders at marketing companies, SaaS companies, drive meaningful customer-led growth. Claire, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Keith.
All right. So as I said before we started talking, I am going to throw a little bit of shade on this. Why should I forget the funnel? As a funnel marketer, I mean, my entire career has been optimizing marketing funnels. So can you dive into that a little for me?
Of course. And no shade to the work that you have done throughout the course of your career. Forget the funnel really speaks to the fact that the way that a customer finds and then interacts with your brand or your company, ultimately your product, doesn't really end at the end of that funnel, which from a marketing perspective oftentimes equals acquisition. Like, we have acquired the customer, yay for us, now marketing stops. We all know, as those who are either owners of a business or those who are tasked with increasing the revenue of a business, that there's a ton of opportunity beyond that end of that funnel, right? There's the entire remainder of the customer's life cycle. So Forget the Funnel really is not meant to, I don't know if I can swear on here.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not meant to shit on the work that marketers do leading up to acquiring a customer. It's more emblematic of the fact that there's so much more opportunity once someone has become a customer to retain them and expand your relationship with them over time.
So this is interesting because this is something that I've been yelling to the rooftops for a long time now, which is because, we worked with a ton of internet marketer and kind of personality brands and stuff. And one of the main things that happened was you would have these beautiful funnels, these beautiful marketing. As soon as someone purchased, drop like a rock. It's like here's your username and password, go into the content. See you later. And it's like, these are your best customers. Like, once someone has purchased the first time, the chance that they're going to purchase again, that after follow is so much higher.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. And not to mention the fact that you have just spent so much of your money, it depends on what you're calculating in terms of your investment, but whether it's your money, your time, the investment of like paying a marketing team, whatever it may be, you have spent so much acquiring those customers. And so to then assume that like acquiring them is the end of the story is just really falling short of the opportunity available there. Because as you said, they've made it over the finish line. So why leave it at that?
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people drop it there? Is it that they don't care? Is it that they don't understand that those people are still valuable? Is it that they don't have products to offer them?
Man, it's of course going to look different from company to company, but that's a great question. It kind of, I guess it depends on like where your philosophy on revenue growth kind of stems from and what kind of pressures you're under as a business. So for example, typically when my co-founder Gia and I, so Georgia Analotti is my co-founder of Forget the Funnel, and then she and I also advise companies on marketing and growth together. And I see often that when we're working with a company that has funding, there's a lot of pressure from whether it's a VC firm or other stakeholders. There's a lot of pressure to focus on acquisition because acquisition is the traditional metric of the growth potential of the company.
Right.
And so that leads to then a company-wide focus on getting people in the door, which then results in the fact that no one has time to nurture those existing customers. So there's external forces, and then there's also just what we have learned over time is or is not important. And in my experience, the ability to leverage or the ability to like really expand your relationship with your existing customers is only starting to gain popularity in recent years. Not that we haven't known it for a long time, but it feels on a larger scale like we are just now shifting away from like the beauty of inbound marketing to, okay, now what else is out there?
And I think one of the reasons is it's getting harder, right? Like when there was no competition, you could have those hockey stick growths from Facebook
The
ads.
internet was like,
it's wide open. Whoever was able to come up with, because no one was doing it. There's very little competition relatively. it was much easier to get those growth numbers. Now it's much harder to get those growth numbers, and you're paying a lot more
Right.
for that growth. Like, I'm seeing now ads and stuff that they want to get return on investment, where they'd get return on investment in 7 to 14 days. Now they're looking at 30 to 60 days, because that's how
Precisely.
long it takes to make that much more money.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So the more optimized your experience is beyond the funnel, so to speak. So if you are let's say if you have a digital product or offering or whatever it may be, if you can better optimize the experience that someone has once they've gotten in the door and they engage with whatever it is you're selling, and either upsell them, or if you have a subscription business, retain their monthly or annual
Mhm.
subscription, then not only are you increasing the lifetime value of what you're getting out of that customer, you're also on the it's the two sides of the same coin. You're also getting a way higher ROI on what was probably a pretty expensive customer to acquire,
Right.
because the market is so much more saturated.
Right. And and I think one of the issues that people run into is, okay, I know that I need to do that. I know I need to nurture my customers, but how? I just
Hmm.
sent them 800 emails to get them to purchase. It feels like more emails is not really what I need to be putting on there. Right. And so I think a lot of people, myself included, come into this like, okay, how do I build a meaningful nurture sequence post purchase? How do I relate to the customers in a way that seems more valuable than just throwing emails at
Hmm. So much of that, I wish we had like an example. I wish we had like an example business to work with, because so much of it will depend on what your model is.
them?
And I, having come from the like software and subscription business model space, like that's what I know to speak to best. And so of course, if you're running a service-based business, that will look different. If you have a multi-product business, like if you are an e-commerce company, also
Hmm.
look different. So we could probably have like 3 separate podcasts about that question alone.
Well, pick your favorite. Let's go into one of your favorites.
Okay. Um, so let's talk about who's really fun to talk about. One of the companies that I worked with last year, that was struggling with this exact thing, which is like, how do we better leverage the people we're already getting in the door, the customers we're already getting in the door? Um, the the A lot of the work that was done was first figuring out what is the point in time at which we can tell that someone who has signed up for our product is getting value and they're going to stay.
Mm.
And
So that
I'm happy to
aha
like
moment.
exactly the aha moment, which I'm happy to dive into a bit further. And how can we optimize for that? Like, how do we start there? How do we, for the people who are coming in, how do we get them to that aha moment faster? So that was the beginning of our engagement. And after that, once someone has hit that aha moment, then what do we do? What are the programs that we can put in place to teach them how to do this other cool thing with our product, or build this new habit around it that they didn't even know they could solve a problem with, and so on and so forth. So it's really about having an understanding of what that first moment of value is in your product, that convinces people, okay, yes, I'm going to stay with this thing. I'm not going to fire it and go look for another solution.
Hmm.
And then also how their needs evolve once that value moment has been felt, and how you can continue inside of your product to teach them how to do new things that bring
Right.
new ways of value. If this is a little bit too like intangible or high level, I can like dive in
I
with.
think I think I'd like to dive into the aha moment, and just to kind of bring it back a little bit. That aha moment is the point at which the customers are like, this thing has value, and then all that nurture goes around. How do we get them to that aha moment, to understand that aha moment the
Right,
fastest that we can?
right,
So
right.
what would be, and so more so than what's an example aha moment, because I know there's lots. The aha moment is really like, it's, I think we've all at some point heard, oh, you should find your aha moment. And everyone's like, yes,
What the
I'll
hell does
find
that
my,
mean?
and what does that mean? Because, and honestly, it's because I've been in I've had many talks and many seminars. It's like, you find their aha moment, and then you see it for Twitter, and it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You see it for Facebook. It's like, oh, that
Hmm.
makes sense. You see it for like Teamwork PM. It's like, oh, that makes sense. So what does it look like for me? And how do
Right.
you, and because you don't want to just guess,
Hmm.
right? Because that's not the aha moment. You're not your customer. So how do you go about finding an aha moment in your own product because you're usually too close to understand what is an aha moment anyways.
Totally. And you have the knowledge of what every little aspect of your product does, which your customers typically don't,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they first show up. Um, in terms of what that looks like, you know, of course, that it looks very different for every product and therefore like every company. I would say the first step, and this is really fun to be talking about because Gia and I, under the umbrella of Forget the Funnel, which I can talk about later, we are working on a program that addresses this, and it's literally called the Customer-Led Growth Program. So I've been doing behind the scenes like a lot of having to like take these ideas and put them on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So this is fun to be talking about, but you essentially have to start by identifying who is the customer who is most valuable for us to be serving right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you can slice and dice that in a number of ways. Maybe for your company, it's super obvious. For example, if you serve both agencies and owners of small businesses of individual brands, you may already know to some extent that one of those two types of customers shows up to your website and signs up for your product with more education of the problem and like a need to fix it. Maybe one shows up with a greater sense of urgency than the other. I'm kind of like riffing on this, right? I'm making this up right now, but let's say that's the case. Let's say you've got multiple types of customer. Your first step is to figure out who's most advantageous for us to solve for first. Not that every other type of customer is not important, but where do we narrow down our scope? So let's say you pick agencies. Again, I'm kind of riffing on this. I actually just earlier today had a similar conversation, and it was legit about serving two different segments of customers. So that's very fresh in my mind. But
got you a good time then.
Yeah. So let's say you drill in and you're like, you know what, this is the type of customer that we want to really focus on right now, and we want to make the experience of using our product awesome for them, so that we retain them for a longer time. Mm-hmm. And our marketing ROI on them is better than it is currently. So the first thing to do is actually get on the phone with those people. And when I say on the phone, there's a level of depth in having a conversation over the phone that you really can't get in surveys, or in some other like mass research way. When Gia and I do this work with companies, I typically like to do both a round of surveys to the customers we're trying to create a better experience for, but also interviews. Mm-hmm. And the point of the interviews is to really drill in and understand, well, a lot of things, but with regard to the aha moment, we're really trying to drill in and understand, when you signed up for our product, at what point were you like, yes, this is the thing that I need, right? Mm-hmm. When was it very obvious to you that this is what you were going to stick with, instead of going and searching for some other solution? And that, if you can identify the patterns in that moment, you're likely getting close to what your aha moment within your product is. So for Autobooks, for example, I'll use that to make this story a little bit, or like this I'll use that to crystallize this a bit. Autobooks is basically a finance management platform for small businesses. Mm-hmm. And so they spoke to a whole bunch of types of small businesses. Actually, they weren't really clear what an ideal customer looked like. They just knew that they wanted to talk to their power users and understand, why do you like us so much? And how do we optimize for that? And what they found out was, even though they're a super robust platform, they have bill pay, and they have like some accounting features, and they have like a ton of other things. All of their many features are actually kind of escaping my mind now, but it's very much like a robust platform. And so their onboarding previously was very much a let's show you around the tool type of onboarding. It was like, here's where bill pay is, here's where your accounting features are, mm-hmm. here's where this is. And what they learned from talking to their customers, getting on the phone and saying, at what point did you realize, oh man, this Autobooks thing is really cool? What they learned was that the aha moment for them was actually this thing that they offered the ability for their customers to send electronic invoices and get paid by credit card without some kind of third-party provider like mm-hmm. a Square or a PayPal or something of that nature. They provided the payment processor themselves, and their users thought that was super cool. It was
And
really
that's
helpful too.
and that's
Yeah,
interesting because that's just, it feels almost like table stakes to a product creator, right? It's
right,
like, I mean, why wouldn't they just get Stripe and hook that in? But to
right.
have that as part of wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it was such a small feature within their very large set of features. And when they realized, okay, this is the thing that's so exciting, they were like, oh my God, we need to totally redo our onboarding because we're adding in way too much crap between the
Mhm.
time we get someone to sign up and the time they finally find that thing. So it led to a total overhaul in the experience of someone who goes from sign up to that get paid moment. They cut out it's amazing how much they shortened that experience. But basically what they did was they did away with, they didn't truly like pull it out of the product, but they did away with teaching people, new users, how billing worked and how
Mhm.
accounting features worked and how payroll worked. And they got them straight to, welcome to Autobooks. The first step we're going to teach you is how to send an invoice and get paid.
Yeah.
And the results of that, it's been a little over a year since we worked together, so I don't remember the exact stats, but I can go find them. But they were huge in terms of revenue for the business,
Right.
and the time to being able to determine whether someone was going to stay and remain a really good user or not get it and
Right.
disappear.
And that's always a hard thing. We do a lot of internal metrics as well as we're measuring, okay, we have I think 6 different actions that we want people to take that
Right.
shows, okay, are these people going to stay on or are they going to not? Um so that's always been really interesting for us, which is what are those steps and which of those 6 steps really influence if
Right.
someone's going to stay on or not.
Right. I mean, even for SegMetrics, I'd be just from a third party standpoint, super interested in understanding, like when someone signs up, what is the one thing they're trying to get to? And I haven't onboarded into the product, but can you eliminate 5 of those 6 things to speed them up to the process of getting to that one thing faster?
Right. And it's funny because, and we'll go a little bit into the weeds on this public podcast that I am. But honestly, it's interesting because I sometimes wonder if we have the Office problem, the Microsoft Office problem, which
Mm,
is that everyone so the famous Office problem is that everyone uses 10% of Office,
hmm.
but everyone's 10% is completely different. So
Right.
you can't take out the other 90% because you'll lose 90% of your
Right.
base. And so for us, and I sometimes wonder if this is me not having drilled in enough and still trying to find that exact aha moment, because the interviews we have done, that
Hmm.
aha moment has been kind of all over the place. They're all based around similar themes, which is really lead value. It's like,
Hmm.
does doing this make people convert or not?
Hmm.
Does this make people on my list more valuable or not? That's our biggest aha moment. But there's so many ways around that because some people want to say, okay, the webinars that I'm doing or things on the funnel or the ads or how I'm promoting or which blog post is like, there's so many
Interesting. Right.
variations of that. And so I sometimes wonder like, okay, is this, oh no, I'm special because blah blah, like the special snowflake syndrome, or and I just haven't identified that aha moment clearly enough, or is it actually that we do have a number of different aha moments?
It almost sounds like, and again, I'm definitely missing context because I have never onboarded into SegMetrics, so I don't know what exists currently. But it almost sounds like there needs to be some way to identify when a new user comes in, which use case makes
Yeah.
sense for them, and can you direct them to just the information they need for their use case, so that they don't need, for now, the other 90% of Microsoft Office. But then
Yep.
once they've figured their use case out, then can you introduce them to, we also do this cool thing and this
Yep.
other cool thing over time.
Yeah. And we've started using
Oh,
useronboarding.com, I think.
nice. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great.
We really like them so far. Best feature is that it's a tenth of the price of whatever the really expensive one is.
Right.
AppQs, which is like $1,000 a month at their lowest price.
Right.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
someday.
they've definitely moved up market in their growth.
Yeah. Yeah, them and Intercom and Segment, like all the, they started out really hitting the bootstrapper level. And then
Hmm.
as soon as the VCs came in, or all the VC companies were like, oh, we got to use this, suddenly it's all $1,000 a month plans. And
That's right. That's right.
And it's good though, because that gives places like UserList
Hmm.
and other companies like that a chance to come in and serve that market that Intercom left. So
Totally. And the fact that the market is saturated doesn't mean that you can't win. You just, to that exact point,
right,
you just need to be prepared to be very clear about which segment, which niche you're trying to carve out.
right,
Where,
exactly.
right.
And that's interesting. I love talking about this kind of stuff because our industry as well is pretty I won't say saturated, but there's a lot of competition, and you're either competing on price or you're competing on features. And there's a lot of people. Let's use Intercom and UserList. There's a lot of people that just really dislike Intercom. It does too much. It's too complicated. So they go with something like UserList that's
Does
priced
a
right,
very specific thing.
does that specific thing, and does it so well.
Right.
Right. It's not the overarching kind of infusion soft where it does everything, but everything's kind of okay. But it's
Hmm.
more like the ConvertKit where it's completely streamlined to we do one thing and we do it amazingly well.
Right. Right.
One of the things that I want to kind of talk about is that, I'm very data oriented. I really like data. I really like measuring things, and
Agreed.
probably to an unhealthy degree. But we're looking, I was mentioning that I have those 6 items that I kind of look at, or those 6 touch points that I look at that say, okay, these people are onboarded correctly and they're going through the funnel and
Hmm.
they're a good trial. They're probably going to stick around. What I know a lot of people have problems finding those KPIs, especially when
Hmm.
not even just for the aha moment, but let's say just measuring a marketing funnel.
Right.
And people are like, oh, I just need leads, how much they cost, and how much I'm making at the end.
Right.
It's like, well, kinda. So everyone thinks they need KPIs to improve their marketing, but no one really seems to know what the KPIs are that they need to be looking at. So what's some advice? How do you help people understand what are the KPIs for this? Not the generic ones,
Right.
but actually what are the KPIs that you're looking for to improve your marketing?
This is legit a module in the this program I just mentioned to you that I am drafting out right now as I have to try to force my thoughts out onto paper and
I
make
think I'm
them
gonna have
make
to get
sense.
a copy of this.
Truly, I pinged Gia, my business partner, for a review on this yesterday. Was like, let me know if this makes sense. So I guess speaking it out loud to you is going to be my second test. But it does. Unfortunately, there's not a shortcut. It is going to come back to identifying who that specific customer is you're trying to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
Because exactly as you pointed out, you may have a customer base that is made up of a number of different industries or use cases, or pick how you're going to segment. Segmentation is another whole podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
assuming you do have an idea of what the customer segment is you are trying to improve on by measuring those KPIs, you've then got to figure out, exactly as you said, what are the specific KPIs that will help me understand if I'm improving performance within this segment alone. So
Mm-hmm.
to contrast that for a minute, and maybe give some more color to it, this was a couple of months ago. I was speaking with someone who had actually just joined a company as the head of growth. And he was showing me the dashboard. He built out a spreadsheet to measure performance across the customer journey. So he could figure out, is my biggest opportunity, and he had used the very popular pirate metrics. So he
Mm-hmm.
was like, is my biggest opportunity at acquisition or activation or retention, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And so I kind of I was trying to drill in and help this head of growth really kind of figure out, when you say that you're using pirate metrics to improve numbers across the customer journey for you and for the customer you're trying to serve, what does acquisition mean? Do you mean when someone arrives at your website, they've been acquired? Do you mean when someone signs up for your product, they've been acquired? And then same question for activation. Does activation mean they started the trial? Or does it mean they reached that aha moment? Or does it mean they converted to a customer? There were so many little kind of sub metrics beneath the overarching pirate metrics that he wasn't accounting for, that he was having a really hard time identifying where he had opportunity to improve, or really how to go about measuring it.
And that's interesting, because I think that the pirate metrics, I think everyone looks at it very similarly, where it's like, oh, acquisition means they're on the list, or trial is the next step. And it's like, but that's not actually true. We actually found something similar, where we had a very traditional get them through a lead opt-in through a PDF or something like that, nurture them into a trial, and then take the trial to the customer. And we were looking at it, it's like, man, this is just not converting. Leads do not turn into trials. And then we started sending people straight to the trial, and it goes like this. We get the hockey
Really?
stick.
That's
People
interesting.
people did not want to be on the marketing funnel, because the people who were, and I think long term it turns out okay, but not when you're paying for leads, and you're paying for them to get a PDF that may convert to a paid trial at some point in the future. The return on investment just takes too long, or isn't enough. But we saw that sending people straight to the trial had a much higher conversion rate. And so our acquisition, we don't care about lead acquisition anymore. We only care about trial acquisition, because we saw that the leads weren't valuable.
Totally. And you really, like, you drive home the point there that the theory of using something like pirate metrics to broadly define the phases of your customer journey it's a helpful starting point, but it falls apart if that's as far as you go. You need to go one level further and understand, for the people we're trying to get into this product or service or whatever we're selling, what are the steps that they need to take to go from not knowing about us to being really happy using us. And those steps. And there's all kinds of phrases for them. I hear people say customer journey stages, or customer experience stages, or success gaps, all kinds of words for them. But
I like success gaps.
Success gaps. Yeah.
Yeah. We
Go
use
ahead.
we use touch points internally.
Touch points is another good one. But for the unique case of the people that we are trying to attract, what are those specific touch points that they need? And then how do we quantify whether or not someone has reached a touch point? And then if you can define your KPIs based on those touch points, you have a much better chance of understanding where your unique customer segment is getting through that experience, or where they're falling off, and where your opportunities are.
Right. Exactly. And that's one of the things that I have been really bullish on, is that in addition to understanding what your KPIs mean, so what is acquisition, but also looking at, I don't believe that KPIs in of themselves help you improve marketing. I think that they help you gauge your marketing, right? They're like your speedometer. They let you know if you're doing better or worse, but they're not going to give you any insight. And so what I've been really bullish on recently is take a KPI and then break it down by the step before it, right? So let's say you're looking at acquisition. Okay, I have an acquisition percentage. I acquire 30% of people who come to the site. Well, which of the refers, or which of the pages, or which of the ads, or which of what is converting the best? And then which on the back end of that is converting the best to customer? So now I have not only my acquisition number, but I also have a breakdown of what are the places that send in people that are my best leads. That even though I have that 30%, what are the best things that I am acquiring?
Right. And having that level of understanding, again, just that step more granular of not just the high level acquisition, activation, retention, but those individual steps like you described, having that level of or measuring at that level also helps you kind of play around or model out whether increasing acquisition is really your best use of time and money right now, or Gia and I just had a conversation with a company we began working with like a week or two ago, where when they first reached out to us, they were acquisition. Like, we need more customers in the door. And they shared their modeling spreadsheet with us. And it became quickly very obvious that to hit the revenue goals that they needed, they would have had to invest a ton of money into paid acquisition. But if they could increase their trial to paid conversion rate by just a few percentage points, they'd hit those same revenue goals without near the spend.
Right.
So you're exactly right. It's not the numbers themselves that give you the insights, but they do let you understand what if scenarios
Right.
in a way that just staying at acquisition and activation and retention doesn't really give you.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, and I think that the main KPIs, they help you find the big holes, but then in order to patch those holes and find them, you have to be able to drill down a little bit.
Right.
That's interesting, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, because I think everyone is very focused on top of funnel, and everyone's like, "Well, this is my conversion rate. I'm not going to be able to improve it, so let's just get more people in the top of the funnel."
Right.
And it feels, I don't know, it feels like that you have outsized results from improving further down the funnel than you do higher up in the funnel.
Totally. There are some really interesting stats on this. If any of your listeners are followers of ProfitWell,
Mm,
Patrick Campbell, the CEO of ProfitWell, and his team publish a lot of studies on the impact of focusing on better monetizing your business. In other words, like experimenting with pricing strategy and also increasing how long you retain a customer or how much you expand, how much they're purchasing from you, versus only focusing on top of funnel. And I'll have to send you like a stat for the show notes afterward, but
yeah.
I believe it was something around the realm of like increasing the retention rate of your existing customers yields, like, I think it was 4 to 8 times the results of simply acquiring more customers and
Yeah.
retaining them at the same rate, something like that. So if your objective is not simply to like prove something to a board, which is also a valid reason to focus on acquisition, but if your objective is to build an efficient like model for your business, then absolutely focusing further down beyond the quote unquote funnel is at some point going to be the way to go.
Right. Exactly. And I think it's Bain and Company was saying that it's like 4 times easier to sell to a customer who has already purchased from you than it is to acquire a new customer.
Right. Right.
And that's why upsells work well. That's why cross sells work well. That's why later on, even getting people to sign up for annual plans works so well, because once you've made that commitment, it's much easier to then to continue on that commitment in another way.
Totally. And that is, I think we'll only see that become more and more and more the case as well, unless there's going to be any change to the trajectory of saturation, which I don't assume is going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. It'll shift, it'll change, but I don't think that there's going to be. I think honestly, when we're recording this right now, the biggest shakeups have happened already, and it's just kind of seeing what levels out after that. But I think, especially in digital, really it hasn't changed much. I don't think that the overall acquisition, the overall kind of usage patterns have changed that much, as far as getting to that aha moment, to that retention, and just how people are looking for and using software.
Right. A number of companies that we've spoken with, well, it seems like most companies right now are in, not everyone is in a famine situation. Some people are in a feast situation in which, the Zooms of the world are a great example, right? Or Slack or anything else, any other tool that has supported the like mass scale transition to remote work. But those companies are also experiencing new pains. They have new types of customers coming in that they previously haven't been set up to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have, it's great that you're acquiring customers like crazy, but if you're dropping a bunch of those people out because, let's pretend, for example, this is a true story, but one head of product marketing I know at a fairly big company that does fall into that remote work category. I was having a conversation with her the other week, and she was explaining, like, we're seeing a ton of signups, but a lot of them are SMBs, and we primarily serve mid-market and enterprise. And we want to retain these SMBs, like they're great customers, but none of our onboarding material speaks to them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have anything set up to support them. And we don't have training materials to teach them to use the product for their use case. So they're seeing a swell of acquisition, but they're really not benefiting from it as well as they could be because they haven't built out that further along experience of the customer journey, or like beyond the funnel, or again, whatever you want to call it.
Right. And I think you're exactly right that there's different use cases. I mean, I think Zoom is probably the biggest one, just because it was in the news, where people were Zoom bombing, right? Because there were passwords, but they weren't on by default. So 90% of people who are using Zoom were businesses. They were tech savvy. They had the password set up. And even if they didn't, it was a 1 in a million chance. But now you have everyone on Zoom. You have classes on Zoom. You have kids on Zoom. And now this has become a super problem. And in their credit, they have pivoted so quickly to fix all that stuff. But it really showed that, okay, people are now using Zoom in a way and a frequency that they weren't before. It's kind of like how Macs never had any viruses before, because they were 1% of the computing population. There was no reason. Now there's lots of Mac viruses because they're a very good target. They're a very good vector. Everyone has one.
That lends credibility to the idea that even once you have figured out your KPIs, you're going to eventually have to change them as your market shifts and do it all over again.
Exactly. And it's interesting because, I mean, it's still funny to me that we call things like Facebook startups when
when they are not a startup,
$100 billion companies or whatever. But I look at, the one that they always say is Sears versus Amazon. And it's really true, because Sears had 100% everything they needed to just destroy Amazon. They had all the warehouses. They had the distribution network. They got complacent. They were looking at the KPIs that they had looked at for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they didn't see the difference that was going to happen. Where Amazon now is where Sears was when I was a kid. And it's so interesting to see that difference. And you can't just sit on your laurels, and you have to reevaluate your business. One of the things that we have on our recurring calendar is I think it's 1 month or 2 months, we go through our onboarding process. We reevaluate the entire onboarding process every month or two to make sure that it's still valid. It still goes with what our customers are saying, because especially in our growth stages, our customers change so quickly. We have people using it for sales now, like phone call sales.
That's super interesting, and warrants a totally different experience.
Exactly. It's completely different than someone who's doing online sales or e-commerce or SaaS or something like that. So it's been interesting re-looking at what our preconceived notions of how people are using the software.
Right. And that exact scenario you just described, for any of the businesses that happen to not be in famine mode, that I think is what we're seeing happen at scale. So many of them are having to reevaluate, what do we do with this entirely new way that people are using our product, and how do we not miss out on this opportunity, essentially.
Exactly. Well, Claire, thank you so much for joining me. This has been absolutely wonderful. So people can find you at Forget the Funnel. We'll have those links in the show notes. If you can send me over that article that you were talking about, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. That Profit Well article.
Yes. And where can people find you?
So forgetthefunnel.com is absolutely the best place. Forget the Funnel, the kind of TLDR on what that is Forget the Funnel is essentially a membership site. So our free membership includes hundreds and hundreds of workshops and resources we've run in the past, related to all different areas of growth and marketing and growth. Marketing and growth is such a debatable term, but and then there is more coming up for Forget the Funnel in the future, but that's the best place to start. And then I'm also on Twitter, Claire Suellentrop. I can send you the link to that as well.
Perfect.
And happy to chat there anytime.
Sounds great. And then when you were mentioning the new product course that you're releasing, and when is that coming out? Because I want a copy.
So that's coming out later this year. We actually did get set back on our timeline because of the impact of the pandemic and how that affected our internal timelines. Right. But that is happening in just a couple of months.
Excellent.
All right, Claire. Thank you so much for having me, Keith.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been super fun.
Yeah,
Thanks so
likewise.
much.